I'm pleased and proud to have the opportunity to present the Honorable Robert H. Goldsborough. He is chairman of the American Committee on Immigration Policies. He is a distinguished author, More Deadly Than the Bomb, a former staff investigator for the House Committee on Un-American Activities, who will speak to us today on the current threat to our protective immigration laws. Who is running this country, and where are they running us? Honorable Robert Goldsborough.
Well, after thanking Mr. Hayes for a wonderful talk and for a fine introduction, I really ought to quit while I'm ahead. I'd like to thank Mrs. McKinney and all the little McKinneys, too, and Colonel Bunker and everyone else who helped put together this magnificent rally. I think everyone agrees that they deserve a tremendous hand, and I don't care how many they've received already today. I think we ought to give them another one. If Dr. McKinney ever gets hard-pressed, when the income tax boys bear down, I told Mrs. McKinney that she has two outs. Number one, she could go around the country and run any kind of rally because she does such a terrific job. And number two, she could go on television and make a fortune. But let's get on with the subject at hand. First of all, immigration. I first became interested in the immigration law, the McCarran-Walter Act, when I was with the House Committee on Un-American Activities as a staff investigator. And the chairman of the committee at that time was the late Congressman Francis Walter. It was during this period that I began to see, more than ever before, the importance of our immigration system under the McCarran-Walter Act. That it is really a subject that is greatly misunderstood, even by many conservatives. Many conservatives that I've spoken to over the years feel the importance of the McCarran-Walter Act and the necessity of preserving it. They feel that it's another battle, and indeed it is. But just recently I was told by a well-informed person on Capitol Hill that if the McCarran-Walter Act is destroyed, if the national origins quota system, which is the backbone of the McCarran-Walter Act, if the national origins quota system, with what is known as the Asia-Pacific Triangle principle, if these are destroyed, as the administration is now trying to do, we are finished as a free individual republic. Why? Primarily for one reason. Under the McCarran-Walter Immigration Act of 1952, there is, as you perhaps all know, the national origins quota system, which says that a person from any of the European or Asian or African nations may apply for entry to this country as an immigrant and get on the quota list. And each nation has a quota based on the numbers that they had here in 1920. Secondly, persons from the Western Hemisphere, all of South America and Latin America, Mexico, Canada, all the independent nations, can come into this country with no limitation whatsoever. They are under what is known the non-quota basis. And almost twice the number of immigrants came into this country last year, non-quota, as came in under the quota system. Approximately 100,000 came into this country under the quota system last year. And almost 200,000 came in non-quota. Now this is the crux of the matter, the heart of the matter. Under the national origins quota system and its Asia-Pacific Triangle principle, and let me explain that. The Asia-Pacific Triangle principle means, for those oops, I hit the wrong chord there. I want to open up this map, and you see the area here, which includes China, India, Indochina, French Indochina, Japan, Korea, the Polynesian Islands. This is the Asia-Pacific Triangle Principle. Now, under the Asia-Pacific Triangle Principle, if a person lives in the non-quota Western Hemisphere, South America, Mexico, Canada, and they are from this Asia-Pacific Triangle area, if their ancestry is derived from one of these countries, and they want to come into this country, they may not come in non-quota. They must come in under the quota of the land from which they derive their ancestry. For instance, China. There are hundreds of thousands of Chinese in South America. Many of them are Red Chinese agents. Under the present McCarran-Walter Act, a Chinaman in South America must apply for entry under the Chinese quota, which is 100. Now, physically speaking, the immigration authorities can perform an adequate security check on 100 Chinese and find out if there are subversives. Under the proposed legislation, and there are several bills pending, the administration bills are known as the Hart-Celler Bill, S-500 in the Senate, and H.R. 2580 in the House. Here are copies of them. These are my copies. I don't have spare copies here. Under these bills and some other bills pending, the Asia-Pacific Triangle Principle is eliminated. And it means that through South America, Mexico, Canada, Red China can then use the weakest link and send to this country unlimited thousands of Red Chinese agents. It will be, according to some experts on Capitol Hill, the weakest link in the new immigration system if it's passed, and it will be the link which will set up increased numbers of saboteurs, espionage agents, etc. It will flood us with Asiatics who will lend still more fuel to the racial strife that the communists have spawned in this country. According to some experts, they say this is the dynamite cap, the percussion cap. That if these bills, or any one of them, now pending before both the House and the Senate Subcommittee on Immigration, if they become law, we can count our days. Now, what is the situation? What are the chances of stopping the Hart-Celler Bill or any similar bills which would destroy the national origins quota system and the Asia-Pacific Triangle Principle? Last year, when the American Committee on Immigration Policies was organized, I was asked to serve as, at that time, the executive secretary. I was told that the chances against us were tremendous, that the odds were great, that if we lost, don't be too discouraged. All we can do is try. Keep in mind that the President was pushing this bill, written by the State Department under the auspices, under the guidance of Abba Schwartz, who it was reported in the Alan Scott paper, in the Alan Scott news column, traveled to Hong Kong last year and placed in a Hong Kong bank several million State Department dollars, taxpayer dollars, to bring in so-called white Russian refugees who are actually Soviet agents. Abba Schwartz, assistant to Dean Rusk, is the man who helped draft the Hart-Celler Bill. Last year, pressure was put on Congress to get this bill through. To give you an idea of the batting average of LBJ last year, there were 30 pieces of must legislation. 29 got out of committee. 27 became law. The only one that didn't get out of committee was their new immigration bill. Why? And I think conservatives all over the land deserve a tremendous pat on the back, and a much needed one. It was the coordination of conservative efforts. Birchers and members of the Conservative Society of America and people like all across the country. If I named anyone, I'd leave out so many that I'd be embarrassed. People testified before the House Subcommittee on Immigration opposed to the changes to the McCarran-Walker Act. It's a combination of efforts all across the land, I think the likes of which the conservatives perhaps have said, well, we never get together on any issue, we never cooperate. I don't know if that charge is deserved, but last year it certainly wasn't, because there was such complete cooperation that, again, the only bill that Johnson didn't get out of committee was his heart-seller immigration bill, which would destroy the McCarran-Walker Act. I'd like to read you this letter from a senator. His dear friend, thank you for your letter of June 10th. I appreciate your writing. As you know, I was a strong supporter of the McCarran-Walker Act when it was enacted. I will resist any effort to emasculate it. All good wishes, please let me know when I can be of service. Sincerely, the senator from the United States Senator. Oh, who was that? Strom Thurmond? Barry Goldwater when he was in office? No. Lyndon B. Johnson when he was a senator in 1957. Typical of the flip-flop that he has taken on every issue, practically every major issue, since he has been a senator and later and now president. This is the man who is trying to manipulate Congress for the passage of this and many other bills which will ultimately destroy this great land. What are our chances against this master manipulator, this Machiavellian genius, this parliamentary expert that we're up against? Well, last year, in the House Subcommittee on Immigration, it was a 5-man committee. 3 men. Richard Poff of Virginia, Arch Moore of West Virginia, and Frank Shelf of Kentucky. Kept saying, we can't vote on a bill, we can't vote a bill out, because if we do, we haven't heard all the witnesses. These 3 men deserve your thanks for stopping the destruction of the McCarran-Walker Act last year. Witnesses kept pouring in to testify in favor of the McCarran-Walker Act. These 3 men resisted all the pressure that the White House could vent. So great that I was in one congressman's office when a call came in, and he told his secretary, he said, if that's another call from Pennsylvania Avenue trying to put pressure on me, tell them I've gone home and I am finished. That is it. I am sick of the threats. You have no idea the pressure, unless you've been there and seen it, that is placed on these men in Congress. The threats, the intimidations. And those who stand up, believe me, deserve all the credit in the world, all our thanks in the world, and all the support we can give them. And they'll never get enough. Well, what's the situation this year? Well, Lyndon Johnson didn't like the bill being bottled up in subcommittee last year, just the way he didn't like bad bills being stopped in the Rules Committee. And just as he did to the Rules Committee, he loaded the Subcommittee on Immigration with 9 men, being sure that all the new members would go along with what he wanted. So we look to the Senate. The Senate Subcommittee on Immigration, the Senate Subcommittee of the Judiciary, is considering the Hart Bill, S-500, which is the administration proposal. There are 8 men on that committee. Who are they? Over here on the left, pushing the Hart bill, you have Senator Phil Hart, the FFL-CIO friend from Michigan, who's introduced the bill for the administration. You have Teddy Kennedy, Massachusetts. In all deference to you Massachusetts people, I bow my head in humble apology. You have, he's pushing it in the name of his late brother. You have Jacob Javits of New York. Gee, I hope you're not hissing me. I hope it's someone else. And you have Hiram Fong of Hawaii, who is Chinese, of Chinese extraction. Now, who is on the other side, on the right? You have Senator Sam Ervin of North Carolina, who every day in the hearings that he's there is putting up a tremendous fight. And believe me, he's a magnificent gentleman, and in his questioning, not at all rude, very courteous, he still, by his reasonable questions wanting to know about the bill, made the witnesses from the State Department, including Dean Rusk, blush. Dean Rusk was asked why he wanted this new bill. You know, Dean Rusk has a shortage of hair up top here. Dean Rusk said, well, Mr. Chairman, it's embarrassing to me when I go to foreign ministers' meetings and they ask me why we have this discriminatory McCarran-Walter Act on the books. And he said, it's frankly embarrassing. So that's why he wants it gotten rid of. Secretary of State. The others have testified the same way. Willard Wirtz, Katzenbach, and last year when Bobby Kennedy was the Attorney General. I don't know. I'm sorry, that accent just slipped out when you listened to him. You know, he and they and every way up. But on the other side, we have Sam Ervin, we have John McClellan of Arkansas, we have Senator Eastland, who is chairman of both the Parent Judiciary Committee Now that's 3. I've given you 3 over here, and I've given you 4 over here. Now anybody who hasn't seen the makeup of the committee, I don't want any replies from anybody who has seen the actual makeup of the committee and knows it for a fact. But anybody who doesn't know the makeup of that Senate Subcommittee on Immigration, I've given you Jacob Javits, Phil Hart, Teddy Kennedy, and Hiram Fong over there. Over here we have Senator Eastland, Sam Ervin of North Carolina, and Senator McClellan. Who is the 8th person? And I want to tell you that this 8th person makes this whole thing like a dime store suspense novel. Never know what's going to happen with this man. He is a Republican. Who is it? Dirksen, right. You all guessed. Well, this is the situation. If it can be tied up in the Senate subcommittee, if Dirksen receives enough phone calls from home, enough letters, if any of you people from here today are from Illinois, I wish you would contact us at our booth in the main room with all the booths, American Committee on Immigration Policies, where as you go in the long corridor, there are booths on both sides, you get down to the end of that section, and then the room widens and it's split in half. We are one of the first booths there. And as you walk down, if you take the right side, we're the first booth. There are 2 booths there. We're the first one. We're with Savannah, Doorstep Savannah. So if any of you would like to set up telephone chains in Illinois, or if any of you would like to set up telephone chains in Arkansas to help give McClellan a boost, or if any of you would like to set up telephone chains in Mississippi to let Senator Eastland know that he's got your backing. And in North Carolina, if there's anybody here from North Carolina who would like to set up telephone chains to contact Senator Ervin, let him know that you're behind him 100%. Please let us know and come to our booth, and And we'll get in touch with you as things look like they're going to start to move, and then we can let go, blast off. Also, if you want pamphlets on the subject, we have, unfortunately, I think there's been hanky-panky with the mails, you know, materials coming to God and Country Rally. We shipped up 3 cases of pamphlets on the immigration question so we could give out to you folks. Unfortunately, none of the 3 have arrived. I apologize. The only thing I can say is if you let us have your name, or if you come and get our address, any of you want to take it now, I'll give it to you. It's the ACIP. That's American Committee on Immigration Policies. But if you want to abbreviate it, just put ACIP. 20 E Street. E as in Edward. 20 E Street Northwest, Washington, D.C. I'll give you the zip code. Some people use it, some don't, but I understand Lyndon Johnson has given out orders recently on it, so maybe none of the mail will be delivered if you don't use it. So the zip code is 20001. American Committee on Immigration Policies. Now, there are some other bills pending in Congress. I will say this, that any letters that you direct to Washington, you should say that because of the overwhelming majority that the White House controls in the House and the Senate, any bill that gets out onto the House or the Senate floor, any bill, no matter how good, can be amended to meet the requirements of the administration so that it matches the Hart-Celler bill, and then it will go through without going back to committee. So your letters should say, "Dear Senator, dear Congressman, I oppose any change this year to the McCarran-Walter Act." Why? Because very simply, if we were able to get a good bill out, say for the time being during unemployment, during school shortages, during this concern over medical care for the aged, during this war on the poor, war on poverty, during all of this, we perhaps should cut off immigration. Say we were able to get a bill out of committee, cutting off all immigration for the time being. If it got to the Senate floor and the House floor, they control the votes, the administration controls the votes by about a 2-to-1 majority, so it could be completely amended. So I would strongly suggest that our strategy be, while the Congress is so overwhelmingly to the left, that we oppose any bill, because any bill can be amended on the floor. That's the situation. Please keep in touch with us if you want to help, if you want to testify before the Senate Subcommittee on Immigration. We need people to testify, we need people to write letters, we need people to set up telephone chains. We need all of this. And don't let it be said, don't let the conservatives be split by saying, well, we can't do it, we can't win. You know, that was a liberal technique during the Goldwater campaign. They said Goldwater can't win. It was used against Taft when he was running, trying to get the nomination in '52. He can't win. And so it split the conservative forces. Don't listen to this. We won last year against overwhelming odds. And with concerted effort, we can win this year, and next year we can win in the elections, and we can win all the fights. If we try, and if we plan well, and if we understand strategy and tactics. The left-wingers are trying desperately to split the conservative forces and say that we have to go along with them. Back anything to save part of the pie. And the part of the pie that they want to save is the crust, and it's really not worth saving. The heart of the bill, the McCarran-Walter Act, that must be saved, some way, somehow, is to prevent the Red Chinese from flooding this country with agents via non-quota South America, Latin America, Mexico, and Canada. Now, I'd like to get off this subject for 1 minute. Do I have a little more time? And speak about something else that has nothing to do with immigration, but has to do with communism directly. And of course, I was interested in this not only while I was with the House Committee on Un-American Activities. After all, you know, I'm formerly a professional witch hunter, you know. So It has to do with a weapon, a tool, I should say, that we came out with a few weeks ago. It has to do with the subject of who's running this country and where are they running us. We've seen a lot of magnificent books on the subject. Dan Smoot's The Invisible Government. Kent and Phoebe Courtney's Our Unelected Rulers. Many others. We've seen books exposing communism. Fine books. John Stormer's book, None Dare Call It Treason, and thank God for it. We had 27 million votes, and I don't know how many millions we can attribute to John Stormer's book and Phyllis Schlafly's book, A Choice Not an Echo. Now we're trying a technique. You know, we have in America besides a news blackout, we have a mental blackout. We have what is known as, what we refer to as TV-itis. You know, I can't read a book. I can't possibly do that. I've got to watch Peyton Plays. You know, you hand a person a book, it could be this big. You know, they say, oh no, that's too long. I can't possibly, slow reader, take me forever. Never get around to it. Thanks, appreciate the effort. So can't, you know, keep it. Or they take it and they say, thanks loads, and put it away. It's a book. After all, it's got covers on it and everything else, and it may take time. So, and besides, you know, I don't want to be awakened anyway. So we're trying a new technique, something that was worked on the LBJ political biography, a tabloid. It's actually a book, but it'd make up into about 125 pages in a pocket book. More deadly than the bomb. It looks like a scandal sheet out of New York, you know, yellow pages, all the latest murders and other things that happen in the subways. So you throw it around, you leave it on buses, streetcars, doorsteps and everything else, and cabs and trains and airplanes and any place, meetings. Pick it up, you know, a person thinks, well, there's got to be a sports page in here. And there's got to be a funny page in here, so I'm going to look for that. They think more deadly than the bomb. My Lord, what is more deadly than the bomb? You know, anything rather than die. Better red than dead, they say. And then, it's psychological, we hope. Life in Soviet America is the first chapter. What is it? Life in Soviet America? Has this happened, or what is it? Is this fiction, or what? Well, everything is footnoted completely with original sources from the Senate Internal Security Subcommittee hearings, from the House Committee on Un-American Activity hearings, from the FBI reports, from J. Edgar Hoover's statements, and from communist material such as Political Affairs, World Marxist Review, The Daily Worker. We use in here no conservative sources. Why? Because after all, we're tainted, you know. We have some kind of bug or something. So we use only the other side. The first chapter starts off with the murder list of J. Edgar Hoover, who he says will be eliminated under a Soviet system. And it starts off, communism is merely a brand name for socialism, said the late Congressman Carol Reese. Through your tax money, it will pay for doctors' bills, old age pensions, public housing, farm supports, youth camps, etc. These security programs are the candy coating of a deadly poison pill, economic and then total slavery in a completely socialized Soviet state. Oh, it can't happen here, you say, but the facts disagree with you. What price must you pay for your monthly government check or your government contract or your public housing? Read the following excerpts from statements by experts who know. Then we go in and show how everybody is affected. The teenager, the businessman, the laboring man, the white man, the Negro, everybody will be affected. And it's documented with hearings from the Hungarian uprising, how Soviet tanks slaughtered mothers waiting in a bread line. Merely, not because they were resisting or anything else, but merely to oppress and to wipe out any hope of being saved, any hope of freedom. John Santos' testimony before the House Committee on Un-American Activities. It is appalling. It is all documented. It goes on to show past communist successes in this country. Documented, for instance, we take a past directive, January 56 issue of Political Affairs, which is the official directive journal, as you all know, of the Communist Party. We go into several of those directives, and I just want to point out one. It has to do with a directive that told the communists to try to influence the platforms of the Democrat and the Republican parties in 1956. And it said this: under a section, quote, the Negro people, the directive on page 24 of the January issue of Political Affairs in 1956, the directive on page 24 had the following to say, quote, listen to this: compel Eisenhower and the federal government to intervene at once to stop the terror. Now that was in January 1956, over a year and a half prior to the federal troops going into Little Rock. You would think this was written afterwards. No, it was written before. Because the communists didn't care where the federal troops were used, whether it was Clinton, Tennessee, or Montgomery, Alabama during the bus boycott, or finally and successfully in Little Rock, Arkansas. But they wanted to accustom the American people to martial law, to the bayonet, the American bayonet being used against American people. And out in Chicago, in the end of April at the Conservative Society rally, I asked General Walker, I showed him this, and I said, is this the reason? And he said, definitely. And you know, General Walker was the commanding general in Little Rock. Well, the next chapter it reads like a story, even though it's documented, how the American communists are financed. And it documents this with reports from the Reese Committee, that special committee which investigated tax-exempt foundation. It shows the tie-in between the Rockefeller Foundation and mea culpa, please forgive me, the Rockefeller Foundation and communism. Where the communists get their money supply, how they fed our youngsters through the National Education Association with communist-tainted books written by communists, how Edward R. Murrow was the head of a summer school at the Moscow University which trained our youngsters in the strategy and tactics of communism, how Dean Russ testified under oath when he was president of the Rockefeller Foundation that the foundation saw no concern, no lack of objectivity in a study of the government's security program by Mr. Walter Gellhorn, who had many communist fronts and who was indeed a cited communist. The study being paid for by the Rockefeller Foundation. This naive man, who didn't understand that the objectivity could be ruined, is of course now our Secretary of State. He goes into the Council on Foreign Relations. Now that's a super secret organization. I don't know if any of you have heard of that. They accuse the Birch Society of being super secret. But we go into the Council on Foreign Relations and we show that the bylaws, in their annual report on page 77, bylaw 2, makes it mandatory that no member of the Council on Foreign Relations repeat a word of what is said at their special luncheon and dinner meetings, and that they are subject to automatic removal from the Council on Foreign Relations if they speak or utter a word outside of these super secret meetings. This is quoted directly from their own bylaws, and they accuse the Birch Society of being a secret organization. This Council on Foreign Relations, which as you know supplies us with the Secretaries of State, the new Secretary of the Treasury, Henry Fowler, as well as the previous one, Douglas Dillon, as well as the advisors to the President, McGeorge Bundy and George Ball, and the whole list, and including our Vice President, Hubert Humphrey. We go into some of the guests at these secret meetings and some of the communists from other countries who have spoken. It's very interesting. Chapter 5 goes into the Communist Blueprint for Victory over America, and we reproduce part of the directive by Gus Hall entitled Which Way USA, 1964, where he lists the 4 main pressure points to be used to take over this country: civil rights and 3 others. I'm not going to tell you the other 3. Go buy a copy. I know everybody's just waiting for me to tell you, then you wouldn't have to buy a copy. I'm not going to tell you. On this page, it tells why it's a reproduction of a communist directive in Political Affairs of the common objective with the civil rights movement and the Communist Party, quote, in program aims, and tactics. This is not what I say. It's not what some conservative extremist says. It's not what any American opinion book says. It's what the communists say themselves. Here it is in black and white. Chapter 6 shows the communist crash program to defeat Barry Goldwater, and it's documented. Chapter 7 was George Washington an extremist? And you know if he lived today, he would be. He'd be a right-wing extremist because he said this. And I'm going to quote what he said after I tell you what Chapter 8 is, because I want to finish with his quote. Chapter 8 goes into what every American should do. We give a few selected book reviews. We can't review them all, and there are many, many more that should be reviewed. We review books. We give suggestions of periodicals for subscription, study programs, political action, and the like. What to do. I'd like to close by quoting what George Washington said in this chapter. Was George Washington an extremist? Listen very carefully. He said this in a letter to a cousin of his, 1776, June 12th. Quote, "Heaven knows how truly I love my country, and that I embarked in this arduous enterprise on the purest motives. But we have overshot our mark. We have grasped at things beyond our reach. It is impossible we should succeed, and I cannot with truth say that I am sorry for it, because I am far from being sure that we deserve to succeed. Our want of skill, our want of ammunition, in short, our want of everything which an army ought to have, are all, no doubt, exceedingly against us. But they are all nothing to our want of virtue. There are not 100 men in America that know our true situation. 3/4 of the Congress itself are ignorant of it. If it be the will of God that America should be independent of Great Britain, and that this be the season for it, even I and these unhopeful men around may not be thought unworthy instruments in his hands. And should we succeed, we are heroes and immortalized beyond even those of former times, whereas disgrace only and intolerable infamy await our retreat. In this persuasion, I resolve to go on, contented to save my country or die in the last ditch. Thank you. May I add one thing? This is available also at our booth. It's a good price, only 25 cents a copy. And in bulk form, the price gets down to 10 cents a copy.
Mr. Goldsborough, you certainly have contributed greatly to our program today, and you are contributing greatly for the cause of freedom. We appreciate your attention-holding and informative message.